I'm not suggesting Queen Camilla lacks authority, but that tiara isn't hers. It rightfully belongs to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, for the Christmas gala at Buckingham.
There's no ceremonial title called family leader in the British monarchy, and no coronet has been quietly passed between Princess Anne and Catherine, Princess of Wales, in a private Windsor Castle ceremony. What is real, and arguably more remarkable than any invented palace drama, is Princess Anne's own 5-decade record of public service, a record that has made her, year after year, the most active working member of the royal family, and one that has quietly intersected with Catherine's own path through a genuinely difficult few years. Anne was born and Elizabeth Alice Louise on August 15, 1950, at Clarence House in London, the second child and only daughter of the then Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. She was baptized at Buckingham Palace that October, and grew up as an active member of the Girl Guides before boarding at Benenden School in Kent from 1963 to 1968, where she left with 6 O-levels and 2 A-levels. From an early age she was drawn to horses rather than the more conventional public image expected of a princess, and she became a genuinely accomplished equestrian in her own right, winning gold at the 1971 European Eventing Championships and, in 1976, becoming the first member of the British royal family to compete at the Olympic Games, riding for Great Britain in eventing at the Montreal Games that year. Her personal life has been well documented across decades of public life. She married Captain Mark Phillips, an Army officer and fellow Olympic equestrian, at Westminster Abbey on November 14, 1973. 4 months into that marriage, in March 1974, she survived an actual, well-documented attempted kidnapping on the Mall in London when a gunman tried to force her from her car. Her personal protection officer and a nearby bystander were among those shot and wounded before the attacker was overpowered, and Anne herself was unharmed. She and Phillips had 2 children, Peter Phillips, born November 15, 1977, and Zara Phillips, now Tyndall, born May 15, 1981, before separating in 1989 and divorcing in 1992, and remarried later that same year to Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence, whom she had met while he served as an equerry to Queen Elizabeth II. Notably, Anne chose not to give either of her children courtesy royal titles, a decision Zara has said she's grateful for. "I'm very lucky that both my parents decided to not use the title and we grew up and did all the things that gave us the opportunity to do," she told The Times in 2015. Both Peter and Zara went on to build lives substantially outside royal duties, Peter in business, Zara as an elite equestrian herself, following her mother into the sport and winning her own Olympic and World Championship medals. Between them, Anne now has 5 grandchildren, and received the title Princess Royal from her mother in June 1987, a title held for life and, at the time, only the 7th instance of it being granted in British history. She was appointed a Lady of the Order of the Garter in 1994, and to the Order of the Thistle in 2000 in recognition of her charitable work. That charitable work is extensive and largely unglamorous by design. She holds patronages across areas including disability sport. She was president of the British Paralympic Association for decades and remains closely tied to the movement, maritime and military causes tied to her role as Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Corps of Signals, and unpaid caregiving through her long-running presidency of the Carers Trust. In a rare public statement issued at the start of 2026, reflecting on the previous year's work with that charity, she noted plainly that the last year has, once again, been challenging for carers, and that many people around the country continue to struggle with the unpaid work of looking after family members, a subject she's returned to consistently across her decades of patronage there. It's Anne's raw work rate, though, that has made her a recurring subject of royal reporting in recent years, tracked in an annual tally of engagements compiled by royal researcher Patricia Treble and widely cited across British outlets. And topped that tally for 4 consecutive years, 380 engagements in 2021, roughly 214 UK engagements in 2022 alongside dozens more overseas, 433 in 2023, and 457 in 2024. A year in which she also suffered a concussion and other minor injuries in a horse-related incident at her Gloucestershire home, Gatcombe Park, in June 2024, and still finished the year as the family's busiest working member. In 2025, for the first time in years, she lost that title, finishing second with 478 engagements to King Charles's 532, a total that represented roughly a quarter of all royal engagements carried out that year. Royal commentators noted the shift reflected an unusual year. Charles significantly increased his own workload after reporting encouraging progress in his cancer treatment, despite reportedly working more individual days than her brother across the year, simply couldn't match his raw total. Prince Edward finished third with 313 engagements, and his wife, the Duchess of Edinburgh, fourth with 235. And began 2026 exactly as she has begun nearly every year for decades, attending the Oxford Farming Conference on January 8 as the event's honorary president, and has continued a full schedule since, including hosting investiture ceremonies at Windsor Castle on her brother's behalf, one of which, in early January 2026, saw her present broadcaster Martha Kearney with a CBE for services to journalism. Asked directly by the Press Association during a working visit to South Africa in January 2025 whether she planned to slow down as she approached her mid-70s, and was characteristically blunt, "I don't think there's a retirement program on this particular life. It really isn't written in, no. It isn't really an option, no, I don't think so." She was 74 at the time. She turned 75 that August, and by all available evidence has kept exactly that promise, giving up her usual summer break in 2025 to keep working after losing the hardest-working royal title to Charles. That relentless pace has mattered more than usual over the past 2 years, because 2024 brought serious, simultaneous health crises to 2 other senior royals. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles was undergoing treatment for cancer. Weeks later, on March 22, 2024, Catherine, Princess of Wales, revealed in a personal video message that a cancer diagnosis had been discovered following abdominal surgery that January and that she had begun preventative chemotherapy. Both withdrew substantially from public duties for months. Charles said in a statement at the time that he was so proud of Catherine for her courage in speaking as she did, and that he remained in the closest contact with his daughter-in-law, given that both were being treated at the same London hospital. With 2 senior working royals stepping back simultaneously, other family members, and foremost among them, absorbed a significant share of the resulting workload, part of why her 2024 total climbed even as she was also recovering from her own concussion that year. Catherine announced in September 2024 that she had completed her course of chemotherapy, writing publicly that, "The last 9 months have been incredibly tough for us as a family," and that she was looking forward to undertaking a few more public engagements in the coming months when I can, while cautioning that her path to healing and full recovery is long. She confirmed she was in remission in January 2025 and has gradually resumed a fuller public schedule since, though still at a significantly reduced volume compared with the family's most active members. She carried out 69 engagements in 2025, by comparison, a number reflecting a genuinely careful, medically guided return to duty rather than any diminished commitment. She has taken on a more visible role at major set-piece events since, including greeting visiting heads of state during the French, American, and German state visits in 2025, and became joint patron of the Royal Marsden, the hospital where she received her treatment. Her former senior aide, Natasha Archer, spoke publicly in 2026 about supporting Catherine through that period, describing the work as an extraordinary privilege she holds close to her heart, a small but genuine window into how the Wales household actually navigated the year, rather than anything involving a rival court or a secret family council. Anne's most publicly visible act of devotion to the institution she serves came not in any invented ceremony but during the real, nationally televised days following her mother's death in September 2022. She accompanied Queen Elizabeth's coffin at every stage of its journey, traveling with it from Balmoral to Edinburgh, then flying with it from Edinburgh to London aboard an RAF aircraft, and remaining present through each stage of the lying-in state that followed. At St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh on September 12 and again at Westminster Hall in London on September 16, she stood in full military uniform alongside King Charles and her brothers Andrew and Edward for the ceremonial vigil of the princes, a solemn tradition dating to King George V's death in 1936 that had, until that moment, only ever been performed by male royals, and became the first woman in the monarchy's history to take part, standing with her head bowed for 10 to 15 minutes at a time as thousands of mourners filed silently past. Royal commentators and members of the public alike noted the significance. One mourner in Edinburgh told reporters she'd been overwhelmed simply seeing all four of the Queen's children standing guard together. It's the kind of real, historically unprecedented gesture that needs no embellishment. Anne's working relationship with the wider family, including her sister-in-law Camilla, has by most royal reporting been steady and cordial rather than adversarial. The two are frequently pictured together at state occasions, including the 3 state visits Britain hosted in 2025, without any of the reported rivalry a dramatized account might suggest, and has also earned a long-standing public reputation, discussed repeatedly by royal biographers and journalists over the decades, for a famously no-frills, unsentimental approach to her position. She has spoken of preferring to travel without excessive fanfare, has been known to iron her own clothes and pack her own suitcases while touring, and rarely grants the kind of personal, emotionally revealing interviews that other royals have given in recent years, which is part of why her occasional direct public comments, like her remark on retirement, tend to draw outsized attention when they do happen. That same practical streak carried into how she raised her own children. Both Peter and Zara have spoken about growing up doing normal jobs and chores alongside their royal relatives rather than being shielded from ordinary life, a contrast Zara has credited directly to her mother's decision to forego titles for them. Her connection to Zara in particular has become one of the more visible threads of the family's public life in recent years, as Zara has built her own respected career in the same sport, eventing, that first defined Anne's own public identity outside of formal royal duty. The two are frequently seen together at events like the Cheltenham Festival and badminton horse trials, and Anne's grandchildren, who live nearby on the wider Gatcombe Park estate in Gloucestershire, have occasionally featured in her rare public remarks. Visiting a naval children's charity in September 2025, she was gently amused to be given a child's apron as a gift, joking, "I don't think that's going to fit me. It might fit my grandchildren, they all cook actually," a small, characteristically understated glimpse of the private grandmother behind the public record of engagements. None of this involved a formal transfer of authority, a hidden succession plan, or a ceremony at St. George's Hall. The real royal family doesn't operate that way, and no such internal family leader position exists within the monarchy's actual structure. What's real is something plainer and, arguably, more admirable. A princess who survived an actual attempted kidnapping in her 20s, competed at the Olympics, made history as the first woman ever to stand the vigil of the princes, raised 2 children deliberately outside the usual royal spotlight, and has spent more than 5 decades treating public duty as an actual full-time job rather than a ceremonial role performed occasionally. She took on more of that load during a year when 2 of her closest relatives were seriously ill, and she said plainly in her own words that she has no intention of stopping now. Anne's role in the family's hardest recent stretch wasn't a single dramatic ceremony, it was simply showing up for hundreds more engagements than almost anyone else in the family, year after year, while the people around her recovered.